All right, this is Julie here with the CTL and a few others, and we're going to record the second part of our workshop, part 2. Okay. So the objective for this is compare and contrasting that pre and post COVID work, classroom. The reason why this whole objective is so overreaching is because we got to start somewhere. And that also means that if I'm thinking about what it was like before and how I'm going to change things now, then I really need to think hard about those things I perceive as challenges or that I think are going to be different. And then I need to label those as either beneficial or challenging, because some of these things actually are beneficial. And even some of the challenging things we can turn to a benefit if we think about it a little bit more. And I'll give you a few examples. So these are some of the things that I think are going to be beneficial differences in the time of a pandemic, learning in a pandemic versus not. Students are likely going to be more attentive and more self-aware because they've agreed to that personal responsibility. And I don't know about you, but I have certainly encountered many students that are just not good at personal space. They just don't have the personal space thing down. So that's something I think everybody's going to be a bit more aware of, because people are going to physically be moving back from you. And psychologically, that's a negative, because as primates, we want to build allies. So when I'm walking past somebody in the hallway, not only can I not see you smiling at me, but on top of that, now you're going to step away from me. Okay, so automatically you're not my friend. Okay, so that's what we've been trained and conditioned to think. So what are we going to do to combat that? Well, I already say hello to everyone. I'm certainly going to say hello with my mouth, but with my eyes as well. I'm going to make eye contact with people, and I'm going to say, hey, as I'm moving away with that comfortable, nice, kind tone that says, I'm just keeping space here, right? I'm still happy you're here. So there's some things we can do with our body language, especially with our open spacing and creative, supportive, caring spacing, that will allow for that distance that we're creating not to feel like a shut off, instead to feel like I'm opening the space as opposed to I'm closing it off. And so that's something to keep in mind. I also think instructors are going to be a bit more focused in the classroom. Now, I'm not talking about content. Let's be very clear. You are all content experts. I am not concerned with your knowledge base and your ability to facilitate your discipline. That's not where we are. The CTL right now is not focused on helping you to better facilitate your content. We're helping you, hopefully at this point, to provide more structure where we can, think ahead so that we have reduction of our own stress and anxiety as well as students, and that we can reduce change. And this sounds weird because we're saying on one hand, you have to be totally flexible about extensions and deadlines and homeworks and all this. And on the other side, we say, be absolutely structured. Don't change a test date, for example. Pre-COVID, if I was teaching a Tuesday, Thursday class face-to-face, and I had a test scheduled for Tuesday, but Thursday in my classroom, I did not feel like my students were ready, I would potentially say, you know what, I'm going to move this back so that we can review on Tuesday together. But there's some assumptions here. One is that everybody can make it to class. And two, that changing that date of the test is not affecting anybody else. But if I'm teaching web or live web or some sort of hybrid, and my students who are now out of work, taking care of their kids and homeschooling and doing all this stuff, had to make arrangements for proctoring to be present during a test, and I move that test, they may not be able to make it. So we have to have more structure. We have to follow our pacing guide and don't change it. So on that hand, we need to be more rigid. On the other side, we need to be more flexible. We need to be more empathetic. We need to say, okay, well, you know what? Here's what we're going to do when you can't do a thing, right? I'm not saying that's for tests, and I'm not saying that's not for proctored exams. I'm just saying, what if they're sick? What if they're in quarantine, right? We're back to this, have a plan. I also believe that we're going to have stronger cohorts. If you put me in an elevator with a bunch of people and the elevator breaks, we're going to come out of there strong little team eventually. If soldiers have higher cohorts in the field. Nikki, when it comes to physical therapy, like personal training, these things, cohorts build very quickly physically with people. The minute I get a single gain with you and I start to feel that confidence and feel better, I have a connection to you. I have a cohort with you and with my groups. So we're in this together. So we're going to have stronger cohorts, and we can use that to our advantage. Also, there can be negative parts of cohorts that can occur, but if we remain open, perhaps not. That doesn't mean there aren't challenges. Of course they are. fear. We got to manage those expectations. High tension. When people have high tension or anxiety, their minds tend to wander. Their impatience is much higher, and they have a reduction in listening. So now, to Janice's point, you can't hear me because I'm wearing a mask. Your mind is wandering because you're stressed out. I have to repeat myself a couple of different ways, a couple different times, and you're still not picking up what I'm putting down. So I'm going to have a plan for that. Maybe I'm going to record my lectures, even if they are face-to-face. Maybe I'm going to provide videos. Maybe I'm going to record certain things by myself and play them and put them up on Blackboard. So, hey, if you missed this complicated concept in class today, I just wanted to go through it one more time with you without my mask on. Video, right? So these are things that we can do. Now, are they more work? Sure, they are. But they're also going to be something you can use always in your classes. They're not going to be one-offs, especially if you take the time in Zoom to record yourself going through a complicated topic, sharing your PowerPoints and your screens and all of that, which the CTL can help you to do, which institutional learning can help you to do, right? So there are ways that we can make these things that we're doing valuable and have long-term value, not short-term value. You know, if it's worth doing right if you can. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to ask you a couple of things that are a little uncomfortable. So have any of you heard of Sadhguru? Do you know who Sadhguru is? No? He's a famous yogi from India who does lots of talking here in the US. Now, I'm not saying that I want everybody to do 4 hours of yoga a day and start meditating, although if you did do that, it would probably be very good for you. But he's talking in this small clip. It's 10 minutes long. I'm only going to show you, I'm actually not going to show it to you. You can watch it at your leisure, about being a visionary. He manages somewhere over 9 million volunteers worldwide for all kinds of humanitarian efforts and crises. And what's really interesting is something that he goes through this video to talk about. He's talking to a group of women called Visionary Women. So it's all women in the room, and they are all volunteers for various different efforts. And he's being interviewed. And one of the things he says is, if I say that I want my class to get a 76 average on a test, my goal is to have a 76 average on the first biology 100 test. Okay, that's my goal. And I'm going to teach to that, and I'm going to provide services, and I'm going to do all the things that I believe provide my students with their best possibility of reaching that goal. But when I meet that goal, it's my success that I'm talking about. The students are successful. That's secondary, because the goal was for me in my classroom to reach this goal. It's individual, it's personal. So when I say I'm going to create a class that, I'm saying I'm going to create a class that. But when I'm a visionary, when I'm a volunteer, when I've made a choice to do a thing, a vision is inclusionary. It's an all-inclusive. It doesn't put me here and the students there. It puts us together. You're part of your classroom community. You're not separate. You're not this authoritative figure up here. You're not. What you do does guide your students, but you are not separate from this experience that you are having with them. So if you decide to be a visionary, and if that is the terminology you take on, that I'm going to be a visionary for my classes come fall during this pandemic and social revolution and crisis and an election year and all these things are going on. If I choose to be a visionary for my students, then what am I doing? I'm creating that vision, and then I'm figuring out how to make it a reality. And I'm not just thinking about me, I'm thinking about every single person that's involved in that vision. It's a small shift in framing, but it's actually really important when we talk about empathy, because I'm not separate from you. We are together in this. And so, Nikki, figuring out how I'm going to deal with 6 feet of social distancing while I'm demoing to a student, the way I might take that is, look, if you graduate in the next year and a half or even longer and you find yourself in a job where you may have to social distance now because we've been through a pandemic and there's no way to say it'll even be done by then, use this as a teaching tool for professionalism when you're out in the workplace. Ask students how they would solve this problem. How are you going to show your clients that you are involved with them and that you are in tune to what they're doing at 6 feet instead of 3 feet? You know, they're going to come up with really great solutions to this because they're thinking about this too, right? So giving them some space in there is important. So I'm going to show you where this video is. And I really like this guy. You know, some of it's a little out there. It's a little new agey, I guess, a little bit. But he's a funny guy and he does lots of different things. And so let's go back. I'm just literally going to do 2 minutes on this. Now, I will say that we are getting paid to do our job. So we're not volunteers.
Right.
But when we take on the volunteer mentality, I think it's appropriate because we're choosing to teach on campus or live web or how we're going to solve problems. Okay? Can everybody hear this okay?
Visionary Women is a volunteer-run organization. And I know that every single person who is here is giving their time to one organization or another. And the fact that you have 9 million volunteers, and you were talking about the relationship between volunteerism and willingness, and that it's through willingness that you uplift your consciousness, if I'm quoting you correctly, or I'm understanding it. In some ways, talking about how it could be a doorway to becoming a bigger person than who you are.
See, before we come to women, first thing is visionary. What a vision means is everybody has desire. Desire is an incremental way of enhancing our life. Today you desire, I must have a home. Tomorrow you desire, I must have this money. Tomorrow you desire something else. These are incremental ways of arranging and rearranging our lives. So needed to do a few things. When you say I'm a visionary, what you are saying is, I have a larger desire, which is not about just incremental improvement of my life. Desire is about me always. Vision is an all-inclusive process. So this itself is a phenomenal thing. If people, instead of having desires, if they have a vision, vision is always all-inclusive. Desire is personal. Desire leads to incremental changes and improvements. Vision can transform the whole situation.
Somebody's cell phone went off.
Oh.
So, about willingness, because you said you're a volunteer, to be a volunteer. A volunteer means somebody who is doing something willingly, right? There's no other compulsion. There are no financial compulsions, there are no social compulsions, there is no something else. You want to do something willingly. So when you're a willing participant right now, you're a volunteer.
Okay, so I'm going to stop it there. It's only 9 minutes long. There's 7 minutes left, and I encourage you to watch the rest of it. We are getting financially compensated, so it's not a one-to-one. But what it is that you can imagine if we started thinking about what I'm doing right now during this time of a pandemic as a choice. And if I start thinking about, okay, so now I'm choosing to do this thing, then what is my vision for my classroom? What is my vision for myself in this space? Now I'm thinking about things like my own health. I'm thinking about my own mental health. I'm thinking about my students' health and their mental health. And I'm thinking about how I can creatively work around problems that start with caring first. And I think that that's kind of where I'm going with this. And as you know, in the CTL, I often talk about this because I do believe that there is a lot that we can learn from changing the way we approach our situations. So how can we make your classroom vision during this pandemic a reality? Well, here's some of the ways that we can do that. First of all, in the top right-hand corner, there is an article here from Vanderbilt University on teaching in a crisis. And it's not necessarily specific to just college, but all of these things apply. It's a quick, easy read. There's some bulleted points in there that I think are really important because we aren't teaching. This is a new normal. Okay, this is not the way things used to be. It's an opportunity to be a visionary and change. Okay, so we're going to set standards and expectations. We're going to stick to them. We're going to have clear rules for the classroom. We're going to stick to those. Frequent breaks, especially if you have to talk to a student. We all know you never call a student out in front of a group, not even for a joke, because you do not know how they're going to receive that information. We all make mistakes, and that's perfectly fine. But if we have an opportunity to speak to a student individually, that's always our preferred choice and method. And it shouldn't be so obvious that that's what you're doing either. And I'm going to go through some compliance things in a minute. We also want to make sure we have upfront messaging. Our syllabus is our contract with our students. So whatever our COVID statements are, we need upfront, and we need to stick by those. Okay. And also we need to let them know that recording may occur, because if you are going to have like a live web office hour with your classes and you want to be able to record that to share with other students that may not have been able to make it, you need to just let them know that recording may occur. That can be in your syllabus, and that could also be something you say up front. Lastly, video cannot be required for attendance for live web or web courses. Does anyone want to talk about why that may be? Well, is there any reason why I might not want to share my screen with you?
Do you mean, I'm sorry, do you mean that the video is as far as visualizing the student, or is that what you mean?
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Okay.
So like you could come, so Angela, you could come to the session without your video on and with a different name at the bottom.
Okay, well, how will I know if they're there then?
Well, it's a great question. But why can't we could do a verbal roll call.
Okay.
But
I can do a verbal roll call though?
yeah, or you can ask them to do it in a chat or a breakout room. But why can't we ask them, why can't we require video for attendance?
Is it legality? Like a legal reason?
Well, kind of, yeah, it can be. Your name is a legality thing if I'm recording your name, right? But what about the video? What about like what's behind me? What situation might a student be in that they don't want us to see?
Oh, got it.
It could be unsafe.
Yeah.
It could also be a situation that they're embarrassed to share, or that they have kids and other things going on behind them. And I will tell you this, we do not in any way, shape, or form want to provide indirectly bias to other students. Now, I don't mean to, but I gather information about all of you by looking at your backgrounds. Now, it's better for me to see your face. I gain a lot from your face too. But I get information just like other students do. And if I were to see one student's background that perhaps might be, less desirable of a living situation, there's an inherent bias that may occur against that student that we don't even directly know about. We're not even intentionally doing it, right? It's just, so there's things that happen that we don't want to make that occur in our classes by mistake. We would never be doing that intentionally. Now, most students are going to understand that if they have a proctored exam, they must be able to show their video. But we don't know what they're doing. They may be taking their phone to a bus stop or a McDonald's parking lot to get Wi-Fi, and we just have to understand that our students are making it work. And they're making it work, and there's lots of challenges going on, and we gotta understand that, look, if you're so involved and want this class and move forward in school so badly that you're actually at the McDonald's parking lot to get Wi-Fi on a borrowed cell phone so that you can take your test, well, then I don't want to stop that kind of level of ambition, growth, mindset, drive, or grit. There's nothing about me that wants to prevent that person from moving forward, because that's what we want, right? We want that. So I can't ask you about it, and I may never know about it, and I'm certainly not going to call it out if I notice it. But what I am going to do is make sure that my test times and all that stuff are real stringently straight and not going to change them, because I don't know how much it might have taken that student to get to that place, to do that thing. Right. And they don't have to tell me, and I shouldn't ask. Now, our students tell us all kinds of stuff we don't want to hear. And that's different. If they allocate to you, that's totally different. Then you remain your role as comfortable as you are in helping our students be successful. But if they are not sharing with you and you want to know, Curious Minds wants to know, I'm sorry, you can't. So I just want to make that really clear, because now we're recording stuff and we're all live web, and you really need to know where those boundaries are. So that you're not caught off guard. We're going to go into a much deeper dive to this in workshop 2 on learning in a pandemic, but this is something that I want to go over with you really quickly. So I'm getting at that. Remember, I told you that I have 20 minutes left to 7 o'clock. So I'll be able to be done by 7. But if anybody, like Angela, if you got to go, I totally understand. For 2B of your worksheet, it gives us some scenarios. And I want to go through those scenarios with you. Altogether, this is going to probably take about 15 minutes or so, maybe less actually. We won't do all of them. Again, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to get your mindset set in that visionary space where you can think about what might occur for you and how you might manage it. So the first one says a student is compliant with mask wearing for 45 minutes of an hour and 15-minute class, but suddenly starts pulling down their mask for the last, let's say 10 minutes or so. What are you going to do?
Reinforce the boundaries.
Well, I mean,
How do you do that?
I would ask the student if they're having an issue, go out in the hallway for a few minutes, maybe.
So you would call them out.
Oh, that's the hard
So
part.
you can say, I noticed that some people are not having their mask up.
You can do that, or you can just put it on you. You could,
Or
you
maybe I
notice
could
it.
say, does anybody want to take a few minutes break?
How about you don't even give them the choice? How about instead of all that, you just noticed this person's struggling. They're putting they wore it for 45 minutes and now they're taking it down every 5 minutes or so. They clearly have an issue. So what I would do is I would say, you know what, everybody, I've been wearing this mask for 45 minutes and I need a break. So I'll tell you what, let's take 5. I'm going to step outside and everybody take a human break and we'll come back and that way, we'll finish up class. I put it on me. I don't need to put it on any individual student. I don't need to call anybody out. Because other students have already noticed it. I've noticed. If you've noticed it, they've noticed it, right? So I don't have a problem whatsoever saying, you know what, we all need a break. Now, if I get an opportunity to talk to that student individually in the hallway, I would. Now, what would you say if you got a chance away from other students to talk to that one student that prompted you to break?
I think I would just ask them if they had some type of health condition privately, like, are you having trouble breathing, or how can I help you with this? Or is there something I don't know about what this is, but do it in a way that's very respectful.
Yeah, but you can't ask them any of those questions.
Yeah, I guess that's right.
You could make an observation, tell them what you saw. And
That's
leave
what you
it,
do.
and leave it.
Yeah, or you could
You can
ask,
say or not say.
okay.
What was that, Angela?
I could ask them too if they're feeling okay. Maybe they're not feeling okay.
That's fine. Yeah,
Yeah.
asking a person a general question like, are you feeling okay? Here's what I would do. Now, everybody's a little bit different. And please remember, your personality is your personality. And you have to stay true to that. I'll give you a cute little example, not so cute, but I was a high school teacher for a long time. You can take the teacher out of the classroom. You cannot take the classroom out of the teacher. I was in Kroger, and there were these young kids. There was me in line before COVID, an older couple, and these young people, high schoolers, maybe they were middle school high schoolers, cussing up a storm. And these older people between us were just so upset. So I just turned around, didn't even think about it, and I said, language. Hey. Well, that teacher eye, right? Well, of course they shut up. And you can't get rid of that. My personality, of course, I've been trained for all these years to maintain classroom management, But the adjustment for that is that I would say to that student, I would say, hey, I would call it out now that I'm alone with you. I noticed you pulling your mask down. I struggle with this too. And you did great for the first half. But, let's talk about some things. If you need to go because you just can't make it, it's bugging you past a certain time. Well, let's talk about how you can get this information either during live web, or maybe you need to be in a live web classroom as opposed to face-to-face. And let's see what we can find some solutions for you. At that point, then they're going to tell you, no, I don't know, I got a cold and I'm having a hard time, or whatever they say. And then you can deal with it, Nikki. And they're likely going to tell you, you know what, I have asthma and this just feels, I know I can breathe okay through here, but it just makes me mentally feel upset. Well, then that's when you say, look, I'm going to break the class, but you should take a break whenever you need to. And I would say that to the whole class, upon return. Like, hey, I've been thinking about this, and you should definitely take a break if you need to take a break with your mask and get you information from somebody else when you come back. Don't stay here because you're afraid you're going to miss something I say. We'll make sure, as a classroom community, we'll make sure you get what you missed. That's kind of how I would handle it. And then word gets around. That's how you handle it. And the next thing you know, they're like, oh, well, I took my mask off and she called a break. So, but you're not putting that student on the spot. So, you know how this goes. Okay, I've got a few more here I want you to kind of do on your own. Like, What happens if a student's walking between buildings but doesn't have a mask on? What do you do? Let's do that one. And then there's 3 more you can do on your own. So you're walking between buildings, let's say main building and ATC, and somebody's not wearing a mask at all.
Didn't you say that it's not required outside? So you really can't say anything, can you?
Well, I'm not going to say that you can't say anything. What I'm going to say is, I don't know what this is doing. Okay. What I'm going to say is that they're not required to wear the mask there, but they are required to socially distance. So
Right.
It's up to you, right? Some of us are going to feel really comfortable saying, hey, do me a favor. We got the 6 feet thing, you know, take 1 step back. Just so that when people are walking through, they feel more comfortable. Some of us might feel good doing that. Some people may not. So create 6 feet for yourself and walk on. You are not a Cincinnati State police officer. You do not need to police students. They are there walking around doing a thing. And not only that, but, you know, we just don't know why that student's doing what they're doing. There's lots of reasons. Now, I would personally say something. Now, what happens if the student starts to escalate with me? So I say, you know, hey, there's this rule, you know, and I know you don't have to wear your mask, but if you could take a step back because I need 6 feet and all that. And I'm walking through. And the student was like, whatever, dude, like I'm doing what I want to do and stop telling me what to do. Well, then what am I going to do? I'm not going to do what I did in Kroger. You know, I'm not going to turn around and say, listen, don't you talk to me like that. And this is a situation. Why don't you go to the naughty corner? No, I'm not going to do any of that, right? No, what am I going to do?
Be personal. Yeah.
Walk away.
Not going to continue
And
to bait them.
That's right. You don't. It's not worth spending the energy to try to de-escalate that situation. Now, if this is a consistent thing, then I'm going to alert somebody about it. I'm going to say we consistently have students standing in this space where it's impossible to be 6 feet away from them when I'm transferring between buildings. And then I would turn it over to Campus Fleets, Maxi report, whatever the rules. They're coming from the safety committee now. They're working on this now of how to do this reporting. And that's what I would do. But I'm not going to call the cops on a student one time. But if I'm consistently seeing this going on, then yeah. Same thing with the elevator. Let's say I get on the elevator. Maximum occupancy is 4. I'm on the elevator. There's 3 people in there. Somebody comes running like they're going to jump in the elevator because they don't want to miss it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to say, hey, we're at our max occupancy. If that person gets on the elevator, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get off. Because the maximum occupancy is 4. And I don't have 30 seconds to fight with you in the elevator up there. And I don't want to anyway. So if you're going to be that jerk who gets on the elevator anyway, I'm getting off for the safety of everybody involved because I'm a role model and I'm going to do the right thing. And I'm not going to get mad about it. I'm going to manage my expectations. I'm going to zoom out because people can be jerks. They just can. And I'm just not going to let that doesn't serve me at all. Consistently, yes, your classroom is different than you walking between buildings. Mm-hmm. Classroom management for you in your classroom is totally different than if you're encountering students you don't know going back and forth. So do me a favor, and when we get off our workshop here, just go through the rest of these scenarios. Just think about how are you going to handle it, you know? Okay, so this brings me to the very last part that I want to go over with all of you, which I guess we could argue might be the most important part, which is developing the tools and skills to manage stress in the classroom community and also conflicts that can arise. That's what we're talking about. But the first thing you need to be able to do is recognize stress. So let's think way back to 5:30 when I started and I said, you need to check your personal data. The same thing is true here. Do you know how you are when you're stressed? Do you know what happens to you when you are feeling under pressure? Well, physiologically, this is an example of that. But I'm just talking like, do you know? Like I tend to talk faster and I get curt with my language. And that puts people off. So I work really hard not to do that. Because for me, I've got a time limit and I'm just trying to get it out there and get it done, you know? And that comes off sometimes as very insensitive to others. So that's something I've been personally working on for a large part of my life, is how do I manage my own anxiety so that I can calm things down so that I'm not making other people feel anxious also. Anxiety is one of the most contagious human emotions, period. So we got to recognize signs of stress. We start by recognizing signs of stress in ourselves, then we can start to recognize those signs of stress in students. Now, for part 3, because we're talking about the scenarios here, I'm asking you a series of questions. Now, this is homework, but I'm not going to collect it or check it or anything. But when you're thinking about your vision and how you're going to handle problems, I want you to think about de-escalation and energy transfer and how we manage these things for ourselves and for others. Right now, I'm going to go ahead and have you turn the page, because one of the things that you're going to do as a post activity is think about your plan. At the bottom of this, you'll see I have a chart. The chart is threefold. It says benefits, empathy and connection, and fairness. I want you to ask yourself, before you encounter students, before you correct people, before you manage something, does it have benefit to the student or to the group or to you? Can you do it with empathy and compassion, and is it fair? Because if it is not those 3 things, you should not engage as a general rule. The other thing is the very next page, there's another chart and a post activity there. So let's come back to this PowerPoint and talk about de-escalation. So no matter what I'm doing, no matter what the situation is, I'm going to create space between me and that person that is a supportive stance with open body language. It says I'm open to listening. Now, with a mask on, that's harder, but we can create that with our carriage and our eyes and our hands very easily and create an open stance. So we're not doing this, trying to talk to you. No, I'm going to relax and I'm going to have an open stance. I'm going to approach you in a supportive stance way, 6 feet apart. I'm also most of the time going to make eye contact. I have an asterisk there because there's some cases where you should not do that. And I'm going to think about my facial expressions. Now, I don't know if you've ever heard this before, but if you smile when you answer the phone, it has a difference in the way the person responds to you. Because even though they cannot see your face, there's something that happens to our intonation, our eyes, and our cheeks, even up here, that tells someone that we're smiling and we're not frowning. So we are going to have to think about, I'm going to smile under my mask a lot more than normal. I'm just going to. If you haven't noticed throughout this workshop, whenever we're listening to other people or things, I'm doing this. I'm looking at you. I have kind of a brief smile on my face. I'm open to hearing what you have to say. I want to know. When should we not make eye contact with individuals that are agitated? Well, let me ask you this question. Have you ever been talking to someone and your gut, like your inside, tells you that this doesn't feel right? That something that you're doing in this conversation is making it worse and not better? Have you ever had that happen to you? I've had that happen to me, right? Where I'm trying to talk to a student and potentially de-escalate the situation, but everything I'm saying is ramping this person up. You don't need to have special training. If it feels wrong, stop doing it. Now, if you have special training, that's great. If you are able to recognize what's happening in quick observations, that's fine. Bottom line is, if what you're doing is making you uncomfortable or the person you're talking to uncomfortable, then stop. It's not working. But in general, okay, and I say this, the reason why I bring this out is because I don't know what percentage of our students have some pre-existing neurodiversity. But what I will say is that if you look at all the things that are going on in the world, it is unrealistic to assume that there aren't people out there that either no longer have health insurance and can't get their medicine if they're on medicine, or are not just overstressed because of what's going on in the world. And how they're managing and dealing with that may not be the best, or they may not have the tools. So I don't want to create, when I'm trying to create an empathetic, supportive environment, I don't want to create an environment that doesn't feel supportive to that person. And it's not my fault if I don't know what to do, or I walk into something that I don't have the information ahead of time. But the minute that I realize that what I'm doing isn't good, I'm not going to do it anymore. That's the only agreement you're making with yourself, is that, you know, what comes next, I don't know. But right now, what I do know is that what I'm doing isn't working, and I don't want this to be worse for me or for them. And so I'm going to exit. And you can do it with caring and empathy. You can say, you know what, now is not the best time for us to discuss this, but I really want to hear what you have to say. Let's make an appointment or email me. At that point, then what you've done is said, I will hear you. It's just not right now. And that may not go well, and you may still have to call somebody, but at least you've attempted to, and you paid attention to your part of the interaction. The other thing I want to say is these 4 things. There's so much more to it, but if you do these 4 things all the time, every time, I will be so proud of you. Listen with empathy, validate that person, talk about their choices, and offer them solutions. If we do these 4 things, no matter how we're dealing with people, no matter who they are, no matter what the situation, we will be able to de-escalate and find creative solutions. What we're not going to do is pick up the bait and argue with that person, try to reason with them when they are not calm, judge them for their ideas or thoughts, create any type of aggressive energy between us. I'm certainly not going to dismiss them, and I'm not going to condescend to them. Exiting a situation and dismissing a situation in my mind are 2 different things. When I exit the situation, I'm telling you I'm exiting, and I'm doing with kindness. When I dismiss you, that's when I turn around and walk away. That's bad. When I basically do, here's the hand and go, that's dismissing someone. I don't think the kids do that anymore, though. I don't think anybody says talk to the hand anymore. Come on, guys. I'm trying to add a little levity into this. All right. So I'm going to listen with empathy. I'm going to validate. I'm going to talk about my choices and offer solutions. And if I think about those 4 things, if nothing else, you get out of this part 2, but those 4 things, that will inform you on how you build your curriculum, how you build your problem solving, how you think about your vision. It will also change the way your life is, because people will start reacting to you in a very different way than they currently are, students included. It is a way for us to change how we interact with our students, especially during this time. And maybe we can carry that on outside of pandemics and whatnot. And that brings me back to this chart. So, is my engagement with the student benefiting the student or anybody else? Can I do it with empathy and compassion? And not only that, is it fair? If I can answer those 3 things, then yeah, I'm all in on listening with empathy, validating you, talking about your choices, and offering you some solutions. And one of the things I have done there is a student says, takes their mask off. Unlike the other one we talked about that needed a break, this one takes his mask off and says, you know what? I know I agreed to wear this stupid mask while I was here, but I'm doing herd immunity, and I don't even believe this thing is real anyway. I think it's just a total hoax. So no, I'm not going to do it. That's a very different conversation than you're going to have with others. Is this benefit your whole classroom to have a conversation together? Maybe. If the criteria feel right to you, then it's okay to have that conversation, to talk about facts and a new thing. But the bottom line is this: I hear you. There is a lot of confusing information out there. We don't know enough about this virus. That's true. But the rules on campus are this, and these are what we have all agreed to. So let's talk about some of your choices. So we have live web and we have web, and we can talk about what else you might be able to get into. And how about if I set you up with, tell you which advisor to make an appointment in Starfish with to make this change, or we could talk to the dean. I've done all of those things, right? I've said, you may be right. You might be right. I know you're not right, but you may be right. And that's okay. If you're right, it's okay. If you're wrong, it's okay. If I'm wrong, it's okay. Here's some choices. Let's get you the solution. Let's get out there. So what we're really talking about is the courage to be imperfect. That's what we're really saying. Because when we have the courage to be imperfect about anything that we do, then we create connection with others. And another way of thinking about this is that if I have the courage and the compassion and the connection, that is equivalent to vulnerability. And I don't know about you, but our students can spot a faker and disingenuous behavior from 10 miles away. They just can't. And if they don't believe that you're being genuine or actually genuinely care about their success, then you lack vulnerability with them, which means you're not showing the courage to be imperfect, or that they can be imperfect and still be successful. So this vulnerability piece is really important. And we all do it, but we don't do it intentionally by thinking about it. And that's what I'm asking you to do. I want you to have a willingness to believe that what makes us vulnerable makes us actually beautiful. And then if we can do that, what we also see then is our students can be vulnerable with us, and they can be imperfect, and we can help to shape and mold them so that when they get to try the goals they're doing, they're successful. and we can support them in that. And this all comes from Brené Brown, who is a psychologist who is also a researcher, and she works with empathy and sympathy and shame and the relationship between all these things. We all have shame, and that can overcome what we're trying to do. When we attempt to control things outside of ourselves, it's because we have a potential and willingness to say that I can be wrong, that I can be imperfect, because in order for us to do our job well, we think that we have to know everything. And the thing is that we don't. And not knowing everything is totally okay. A willingness to be imperfect allows for genuine conversation. It will lead to healthy cohorts, and it will lead to reduction of conflict. Do you know how many times I've heard situations where a student will call a professor out on a content item that the professor may have gotten wrong, but instead of just saying, you know what, you might be right, class, get out your phone and Google, let's take a look, and then saying, hey, you know what, I got a lot swimming up in here and I misspoke, I'm sorry, but yes, let's correct this now for everyone. That allows you to connect with your students. That allows you to be fallible and imperfect and therefore vulnerable, and they're much more willing to trust you than they would be if you took the stance of, nope, you're wrong, and I'm going to prove you wrong, and don't challenge me. And you'd be surprised how many people in that moment get defensive instead of curious and corrective. So I have some resources here for you. So the first one is another article about why we should care about empathy in the classroom. And then also the vulnerability, power of vulnerability. This is Brené Brown. I took those bullet points from this about 20-minute lecture, which is really cool. And then also there's empathy here, which is, this is a speech about corporate world, but our clients are our students. So I felt that although it wasn't directly related, it was really interesting. You have to do a little bit of modeling in your mind when they talk about customers and consumers, because our clients are our students. But the reason why I shared this with you is because look, one of these comments on YouTube from a student about how they wish their professors had empathy. And lastly, I have two last things down here. One's called Right Response, which is a type of CPI training. This is a free non-aggressive de-escalation response manual that you can download. The other is actually the training that you can take for free using it. And the last one's called Verbal Judo, which is from Dr. George Thompson. And he's talking about how we can change our language so that we can connect with folks. So, okay, it's a lot to process. So let's recap a little bit. I'm gonna, after this part 2, give you this PowerPoint. You'll get your CEC credits, as well as all those links will be there.
Okay, I was gonna ask, can we get a PowerPoint?
Yeah, but you know, Angela, I like to give it after, not before. Yeah, so look, I'm asking you to think outside of the box, because here's what I believe. We all do this all the time, but I don't know that we do it intentionally. In other words, when I encounter a situation with a student, of course I'm going to listen with empathy. We all do that. We are doing this job because we care about this population. Okay, this is why we're here at community college. We believe in this mission. No questions asked. But instead of it being an afterthought or something I do in the moment when I encounter these things, I want you to be intentional about them, because you'll be surprised at how less conflict you have, how much less conflict you have in the classroom that you have to manage if you set this tone from the beginning. Look, I don't know what's going to happen. 2 weeks from now, they may say this virus is airborne, and then everything we're doing, we have to change. And then we come back to this, I got to be uber flexible over here. And at the same time, build my plans and things out here that I can keep that are standardized. And this is a weird place for us to be in right now. So I'm going to give you some challenges. All I've asked you to do in part 2 is think. That's all I want you to do, is just think. Be a visionary, right? Include everyone in your thought process, including yourself. I want you to spend an hour a day doing something that's just for you. I don't care if it's cooking or be outside or take a bath or read a book, but you need to maintain your mental stamina, your physical stamina. You need to stay well. And that means that you have to take care of yourself. So you have to promise me you're going to do an hour a day just for you. Whatever it is, I don't need to know. Just say it, just for you. And then I want you to think about finishing your worksheet, there's a post activity on the very back. It's all about building your plan. And that's the last objective for the workshop. In my backpack at my front door, I have a checklist of all the items in there. And what's in there for me are my UV sterilization box, the masks I'm taking with me, cleaned pens, pencils, and dry erase markers, my phone, obviously my keys. I have hand sanitizer, and I also bring Clorox wipes. If I have those things with me, I feel much calmer. And it's like my little go bag. I take it to the car, I take it to wherever. It's not for anybody but me. It's just so that I know throughout the day, one, I'm not going to forget to be vigilant. And two, I feel like I've got my little pack. So you should think about that for yourself, you know, and whatever that it means for you. Okay, it's question time. Does anybody have any questions?
No, actually, this was really good. Thank you.
Well, I know I did a lot of talking during this time, and I understand, and it will be much more Socratic when we get to the worksheets of the second workshop, where you'll be able to think about your class individually. But reframing people isn't hard, but it does take time to express why. You know, I care about all of you. I care about all of you the way you care about your students. At the Center of Teaching and Learning is a place of service. This is a place for me to provide you with resources and ideas and to help you execute them if you ask. But at the same time, we're all in this together. And this is tough. We're trying to overcome clinicals, and I mean, you know, does a student want to wait a whole year to get back into a program? And I mean, it's just, this is tough. So give yourself some grace and space. Manage your expectations and zoom out when you need to, and reapproach it with that visionary mindset. And I guarantee you're going to come up with creative problem solving. I guarantee it. And we're going to be much better for it. So please fill out your evaluations and send them to Tammy Smith. I don't see your name on them at all, but I do read them and they do inform me. So be as honest about your feedback as possible. I want to thank you all for being visionary and being open to some interesting ideas. Again, I'm not trying to shove any type of particular idea down to you. I just want you to be open to listening to other ideas. Okay, all right. Any last minute comments I appreciate, and any feedback that you want to give me verbally, I'm here. Otherwise, I thank you all so much for your time tonight, and I hope this was helpful for you.
It was very helpful.
Thank you.
I have office hours. We can work together one-on-one. All right, everybody. I'll send you your email in just a moment. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Feel better.
Bye-bye.
I hope those ears heal.
Oh, they will. They will. Thank you.